Jimin unpacks the reasons for his admiration for Jungkook. It's much deeper than we think. In the midst of the world's spotlight that can never be separated from the BTS name, there is one moment that has recently made many people speechless. Not because of the grand stage, not because of global records, and not because the sales figures are back in history. The moment came from Jimin's simple words about Jungkook, words that sounded gentle, but harbored an emotional depth that surprised many. What Jimin revealed turned out to be much deeper than just admiration between group mates. It is a recognition born of a long journey, of difficult days that are not always in sight of the cameras. Jimin is not the type who often talks at length about his feelings in public. He is known to be calm, careful, and often keeps personal matters tightly behind his professional smile. But when Jungkook's name was called, his tone changed. There was a small pause, as if he had chosen the words carefully, as if what he was going to say was not just an ordinary compliment. And sure enough, what came out was not a corny sentence, but an acknowledgement of Jungkook's figure that had probably escaped the attention of many people. According to Jimin, Jungkook is not only the golden magne known to the world for his talent. He is someone who carries a burden greater than it seems. From a very young age, Jungkook was already in the midst of a whirlpool of global expectations, pressures, and demands. But what amazed Jimin was not how Jungkook stood on stage, but how he still stood tall as a human being behind it all. There is constancy that is not talked about much, there is maturity that grows too fast, and there is silence that is often mistaken for impeccable strength. Jimin revealed that he often saw Jungkook struggling in silence. When many people thought Jungkook was always strong, always cheerful, always ready, that's exactly where Jimin saw another side that was rarely highlighted. Jungkook is the type who prefers to keep his own fatigue to keep others comfortable. He rarely complains, rarely asks, and more often makes sure everyone is okay before thinking about himself. For Jimin, it was this attitude that was the most thrilling. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was real. In the course of BTS, they grew up together not just as a group, but as a family. Jimin recalled the early days when Jungkook was very young, still awkward, still learning to know the world that was suddenly so big. That's when Jimin saw how Jungkook absorbed everything on the fly, not just the choreography and songs, but also the responsibility. He learned to read the atmosphere, learned to restrain himself, and learned to be a backup without ever being asked. That, according to Jimin, did not come out of nowhere. It was the result of pressure that slowly shaped Jungkook into the figure we know today. What made this confession feel so deep was the way Jimin said it without excessive sensationalism. There were no tears on display, no heroic overtones. Only honesty flowed slowly, but hit right in the chest. Jimin admits that he himself often learned from Jungkook, learned about sincerity, about working without saying much, about giving without demanding anything in return. In a world of relentless scrutiny and commentary, Jungkook still chooses to focus on the things he considers important. For Jimin, his admiration for Jungkook was also born out of respect. Respect for a person who grew up under public pressure since adolescence, but has not lost his empathy. Respect for a person who can become a world star without turning into a stranger to those closest to him. Jimin mentioned that Jungkook stays the same in small spaces backstage, in dorms, in quiet moments that cameras never record. And it is precisely there, according to Jimin, that a person's true value is seen. Fan reaction is inevitable. Many admitted that they were goosebumps. Many felt that Jimin's words opened up a new point of view about Jungkook. During this time, the public is accustomed to seeing Jungkook as the perfect figure, visual, vocal, performance, all as if flawless. But Jimin's confession presents a more human reality. Jungkook is not without burdens. He chose to bear it himself. On the other hand, Jimin's statement also shows how deep the bond between BTS members is. This is not just another professional relationship built on contracts and a solid schedule. It's a relationship forged by the fatigue, failure, success, and fear they face together. When Jimin spoke of Jungkook, it was clear that he was not speaking as a coworker, but rather as someone who had witnessed Jungkook's journey from a very close distance. This recognition is a reminder that behind the dazzling stage lights, there is a human being with a complex story. Jungkook may rarely reveal his heart, but through Jimin's words, the world is given a chance to see him more closely. Not as a perfect idol, but as someone who is constantly trying to survive, learn, and grow. And perhaps, therein lies Jimin's true admiration. Not on achievements that can be counted, not on praise that can be read in the media, but on determination that has never been exhibited. A silent but real force, a depth that has been hidden, until finally revealed through the honesty of a friend. When Jimin finished speaking, there was no dramatic closing sentence. But it is precisely the silence after it that is felt most strongly. It was as if everyone who heard was invited to reflect, that perhaps all this time we had been too busy admiring Jungkook from a distance, without really understanding the burden he was carrying. And through this confession, Jimin not only unpacks the reasons for his admiration, but also opens the world's eyes to a much deeper side of Jungkook than we thought. The silence after Jimin's confession was precisely the most talking part. No background music, no dramatic video cuts, no exaggerated effects. But for those who really listened, Jimin's words felt like opening a door that had been tightly closed. The door to Jungkook's side is rarely, if ever, shown to the world. And from there, a new understanding begins to form. Jimin knows very well that Jungkook is a figure who is often misunderstood. The world sees him as a symbol of perfection, a young man who seems to have everything from a young age. But Jimin, with whom she lived side by side for many years, saw something different. He saw how Jungkook grew up with a sense of responsibility that was too great for his age. He saw how Jungkook learned to swallow his own fears so as not to become a burden to others. And he saw how Jungkook often smiled not because everything was fine, but because he didn't want others to worry. In Jimin's story, there is one thing that feels very human: guilt. Jimin admitted that he often felt guilty because he realized how heavy a burden Jungkook had been carrying all this time. Not because Jungkook hid it on purpose, but because he was too used to bearing it himself. Jungkook rarely asks for help, rarely complains, and more often adjusts to circumstances, whatever they may be. This attitude, for Jimin, is not a sign of weakness, but rather a proof of maturity that grows from pressure. Jimin also revealed that there are many small moments that are never known to the public. The moment when Jungkook chose silence when he was actually exhausted. A moment when he stays in training longer not because he is asked to, but because he feels that he must always be better than yesterday. The moment when he puts the needs of the group above his own feelings. It was never made public, it was never made into a heroic story. But for Jimin, that's where Jungkook's real strength lies. What makes this narrative even deeper is the way Jimin talks about time. He realizes that Jungkook lost many things that should have been part of his youth. As others learn to know the world casually, Jungkook has learned to deal with the global spotlight. When others may doubt and be wrong, Jungkook is required to always be right. And even so, Jungkook still chooses to love what he does, without blaming anyone. Jimin did not call Jungkook a victim of circumstances. He rejects that narrative. Instead, he emphasized that Jungkook was someone who consciously chose his path, even though he knew it would not be easy. This is what makes Jimin's admiration so sincere. Not pity, but respect born of deep understanding. This recognition also changed the way many people viewed BTS's dynamics. During this time, the public often focuses on certain roles: who is the leader, who is the pacifier, who is the comforter. But Jimin's story shows that Jungkook also plays an important role, although often invisible. It is an emotional axis that works in silence, maintaining balance without the need for recognition. Army in different parts of the world responded in the same way. Fell silent, then pondered. Many realized that they had been enjoying Jungkook's hard work without really understanding the price he had to pay. Jimin's words felt like an invitation to be more careful in admiring, to see idols as people, not just symbols.